But okay, so
Actually,
400 is over the mark. If you had to give me like a rough gram per day, because like my goal is going to be to probably get over 200 pounds. I'm probably going to have to do that realistically, keeping it as condensed as I can, which this is going to, I'll be eating this much for probably 1.5 to 2 years realistically. Like this is not going to just be like, few months, snap, because getting that much muscle, it's not going to happen.
What I would do in your shoes is I would work off 2 grams per kilo of lean mass, either ideal if you were an overweight person, or if you're just an average Joe, you would probably go with your height in meters multiplied by itself, then multiply that by 22.5 for your ideal weight in kilograms.
Interesting.
Fine. Whatever. That's an approximation that's good for most people. It's there and thereabouts. The other thing I would do is I would track your blood glucose over time.
I've never done that. You need a monitor for that, correct?
Well, you can either get one of those finger prick, instantaneous snapshot monitors, or in many countries and territories now, you can actually get CGMs over the counter.
Oh, really? Okay.
Which can be interesting. And I would track your glucose. If you're fasting glucose, I should say, if your fasting glucose is drifting up, you are eating too much protein almost certainly. And when I say drifting up, I don't mean just a little bit. I mean, if it goes 5.2, 5.3, almost looking like what they call pre-diabetic levels, that's because you're eating too much protein. And the answer is to cut back the protein and increase the fat.
If I'm correct, that's because I think I've heard you say that excess protein converts to blood sugar. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if your blood sugar gets too high for too long, it starts getting transmuted into triglycerides and stored as body fat.
Now, this is something that's interesting because, I come from the mainstream fitness scene where it's Kaiko parrots. I call them the Kaiko parrots since I've kind of discovered this. It's like, the first law, we're out, calories and they just parrot the same thing.
Without understanding any of it.
It's kind of crazy, Bart. Like, I watch some of these people with PhDs and, like, I know more than what they do because I watch you now, and it's kind of sad.
Yeah.
But so what this would come down to essentially is, like, if we have 2 people on the same calorie diets, right? Even if protein's the same and one is doing, because typical bodybuilding nutrition is pretty much what I'm doing, but inverted with the carbs and fat. So you hear all the time, it's like, you want to keep fat as low as, I often hear like 30%. Of the total intake, and then they fill the rest with carbs. They all say that.
Yeah.
So given the hormonal changes and other things happening, you can expand on this, but if you had 2 people on the same calories, same length of time, same genetic twins, right? One is high carb, one is high fat, say keto, because this isn't necessarily keto what I'm doing, but it's kind of close, I suppose. You would surmise that the person on the high fat diet would have less overall body fat accumulated by the end of whatever time frame. Is that correct?
All else being equal, and those 2 genetic twins being representative of an average person and not both genetic twins who are both in some way affected by SNPs that would cause them individually to respond out with the normal pattern. I guess what you're asking is if 2 average identical people did the exact same diet with the exact same amount of exactly the same everything, except in terms of so-called heat units, calories, the C word, except that one of those diets is more fat and less carb and the other one is more carb and less fat, then overall, the best body composition, the best health, the best presentation, the best response to training is going to be in the person who eats the high-fat, low-carb diet if those 2 people both undertook those diets for long enough. Because there is also a transition. Because when they do these kind of studies, these short-term studies, they'll take people eating whatever diet they're eating, and they'll say, right, the research project starts tomorrow. So from tomorrow, here's what your diet is. Bam. And they change that person's diet suddenly overnight to something completely different. Well, that completely invalidates the results because you need to respond to a change in your diet. Your body needs a chance to adjust to that. That's why I'm always actually saying to people, don't change your diet overnight suddenly from anything to anything else. Reason being, because that will, excuse my French, shit up. Yeah.
Literally is quite literally the most overused
literally
word.
Is quite literally.
I pay attention to the content, Professor. I know.
Good.